Hello, everybody. I'm Jody Harrison Bauer, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm so happy to have you join me today and my guest. If you are a first-time listener, welcome to the show. This is the show where we educate, empower, entertain a little bit, and inspire you to live a fearlessly authentic life. And with each guest I have every week, we talk about an obstacle they've overcome or a fear they've overcome or a service or a product that they're working with that is helping other people live their fullest lives. And I love this because we get to share everybody's experience because everybody has an experience for a fear or an obstacle that they have overcome. And I've learned so much in the past 2 years. Oh, by the way, today's episode, what episode is today? Oh, no, it's not. I don't know what episode it is today. Forget it. Never mind. Never mind. I was thinking of something else. Okay. Forget that. Anyway, for everybody who's listening, 100 countries, thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear from you. So remember to rate, review, subscribe. We have a 5-star rating and I want to keep it that way. So keep them coming. Please share this with everybody you know. You can also subscribe on YouTube at Jody Harrison Bauer. So go there so you can see what my beautiful guests look like. And sometimes it's just nice to see what the person looks like rather than just always listening to us. And one other thing I wanted to share before I start with the show is a year and a half ago, I can't believe it, I turned 60 years old. So I'm now 61 years old, 61 and a half almost. And I decided to go more plant-based and I chose Sakara as the company that I would work with because I didn't know how to create plant-based meals. I didn't know what would taste good. So they deliver plant-based meals to your home, breakfast, lunch, dinner. They have snacks. They have a metabolism powder. They have an energy bar, a metabolism bar. It is a great way to start your plant-based journey if that is something that is important to you. And I love the way I feel because of Sakara. So you can use my code and get 20% off. So it's XOJody to save 20% off on your first purchase. And that's if you go to Sakara, SAKARA.com. XOJody, save 20% off. Okay, that's it. I hope you go to Sakara. If you do, please let me know what you get and how you feel. I'm always excited to hear from everybody. So here we go. I have Summer Lee joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here. Summer, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited too. And I just love that picture behind you. It is a surfer. It's a surfboard with the Chanel logo.
Yep. It's a good one. I love it. It's one of my favorites.
Why did you choose that picture?
Honestly, it just kind of stuck out. It's actually one of our brand partners. They were nice enough to offer me a little move-in present when we bought this home, and I saw it on the website and I was like, I had to have it.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I am going to introduce you to everybody who's listening. Summer Lee is an influencer marketing strategist and founder of Spark Talent Group, a modern talent agency representing top-tier digital creators. Over the last several years, Summer has strategized and executed influencer marketing campaigns at several leading agencies and at TikTok in-house. Very, very cool. Yeah, you've already had at the age of what? 25 you are, 26?
25. I will be 26 in 2 months.
Okay. So at the age of 25, you have already done so much. Let's start from the beginning, not from when you were born. But in high school, did you have any idea of like what your family expected you to be or what you wanted to be? Any clue?
Yeah, it was very different, I can tell you, than what I ended up doing. But my whole life, I had thought that I was either going to be a vet or a doctor. And I'd even gone to college thinking, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to study biomedical science. But obviously that didn't work out.
Did you? Well, I know that we discussed, in your culture, there's like this level of expectation that, your family has for you. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a daughter of 2 immigrants from Taiwan, and my parents immigrated over to this country when they were in their 20s. And so I think part of that story and that culture is, having a really stable job. People always talk about the top 3. It's like lawyer, doctor, engineer. So, I've always loved animals. So that's kind of where it began is I was, really interested in becoming a vet one day, and that somehow switched over into becoming a doctor. And I think my parents were excited. Being the older child is very much kind of older child syndrome, where very people pleaser. He really wanted to make them happy, and I
Yes, I
really
know.
respect my parents. So that was kind of, yeah, that was kind of where it began, and that was what I had set out to do, and what I kind of convinced myself that I wanted to do for a really long time.
So I'm curious. So growing up in your family was, I don't know where I just came up with this idea, because I was thinking about, I'm Jewish. I grew up with two Jewish parents, and it was go to college, meet somebody, get married. It was never it was never about my career. It's, I was born in
Mhm.
1960. So it's just so interesting that that influence is so important. And then when you break out of it, it's like you start, the family realizes, oh, okay, you don't have to be this. You start changing the way history is going to be told, right? It's not lawyer, doctor, engineer. So was there any other avenues? Was it just those three things in particular that your family were like, okay, you need to be one of these things?
Yeah, I think that was really kind of the ultimate goal for them. And I was really lucky in that I met a lot of other, friends or coworkers or colleagues from a similar background. And a lot of
Mhm.
their parents are way more strict than mine. So I feel like even then I was a little bit on the lucky side, but I feel like it's not so much about necessarily the prestige of the job, which of course part of it is that, but I think it's also, coming from an immigrant mindset, it's very much about stability and making sure that you never have to worry about financial stability for the rest of my life. And so I think that was kind of a driving factor. And for when I had first decided to switch over from the science, like medicine field, over into marketing, my parents were so freaked out. They thought I was going to be door-to-door salesman. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm sure anyone can understand a parent being really worried, especially when they had thought this whole time I was going to be a doctor and that was what I wanted to do. So they were very much freaked out when I kind of wanted to shift paths a little bit.
But always really supportive.
Yeah, I think it took a little bit of getting used to. For the first probably like year or two, they definitely were very skeptical, really unsure. But I think, after a little while of getting used to the idea, they now have become very supportive, and are, on, very, very, yeah, just generally supportive.
I think that's great. You're setting the tone for everybody here. So you go to school, you switch your major, you go into marketing. What happens when you get out of school? Were you, and was your attitude, it sounds like you're very close to your parents. So was your attitude, hey, listen, trust me, I feel right about this. I'm a really responsible person. You got to trust me on this. So do you think there was more pressure on you when you graduated to really get a killer job to show your parents that you did make the right decision with this new switch?
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of a funny story because, first out of college, I decided to pursue this marketing career. Not, I was still young, also, like not fully sure what that meant. And there's so many jobs under the marketing umbrella. I wasn't quite sure what exactly I wanted to do within that. And so I definitely felt some pressure to make sure it was a good job, with a good salary. And I ended up moving out to San Francisco for my first job out of college. And it was a really big shift. But it's a funny story because as I was making the shift in my major and deciding to pursue marketing or communication slash business, I had told my dad, I was Googling all these salaries on like Glassdoor and just on Google of like marketing manager salary. And I was showing him like, look, directors of marketing can make $100,000 a year. Like I'll be okay. Some of the salaries being comparable to, a doctor's salary once you have a little bit of experience. My dad kind of laughed at it. It was like, director of marketing, you're not going to get there for like 10, 15 years. And then it all kind of came full circle because at my first job, albeit it was a startup, so I kind of hop the ladder a little bit, but I ended up being promoted about a year and a half into director of growth kind of role, and had hit the salary requirements within a year. And so my dad it was a very full circle moment. He was like, okay, my baby's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right.
Wow. Wow. What was the startup?
So it was a company called Unity Influence that eventually rebranded into a company called Catalog. So started out as kind of an influencer marketing platform, really similar to a lot of the big ones that are out there right now. And then we kind of shifted over into the content space a little bit in, as startups go, you change business models a couple times.
Right. So when you talk about the influencer world to content, explain that to somebody who doesn't know what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So with influencers, I think it's very much intertwined. Both of them have a lot of, it's kind of like a Venn diagram. There's a lot in the middle. But with influencers, a huge reason to use influencers for marketing purposes is to get content out of them. So they can produce really high quality content as you do. And, brands are able to use that content for their marketing purposes. But on the flip side of it, we were essentially trying to solve this problem of it's so expensive for brands to get custom high quality produced content. So we're not talking influencer content anymore. It's more like photo shoot with the stylist, with the producer, all of the whole 9 yards on the other side. And so we were trying to figure out a way to kind of scale that process for brands, and so that was kind of the problem that we were trying to solve.
It sounds like that so many influencers, and that ranges from, if you're on Instagram, for example, or TikTok, because TikTok, there's so many influencers now, that whether you have 200 or 2,000 or 20,000 or 2 million followers, you do have some influence. And so do you find that if you pick the right influencer versus spending all the money with a photo shoot, where I would think using the influencer for the most part is more cost effective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about working with content creators and influencers is that they really kind of are one-stop shop for so many things. And it's really, traditionally you go to a celebrity, they pose with your product once, and that's kind of it. But with an influencer, as you're the producer, you're the set designer, you're the costume designer. You really are kind of all encompassing, and to be able to have kind of a one-stop shop to have this really high quality produced content from an influencer who can kind of handle, the beginning to end for you, it's very much more cost effective and time effective, to be truthful.
I would think so. So after that startup, how long were you there? And then what was the next jump? Because you've had a pretty full career so far.
Yeah, so I got about a year of start time because I graduated a little early and was working for that company before I graduated. So I kind of jumped the gun a little bit at the end of my college career. But basically after that, I was there for about 3 years. From that point, I freelanced and contracted at a couple different influencer marketing agencies. It was kind of right around when COVID was about to hit, Slash was hitting. So it's kind of figuring out like, okay, what do I want to do for my next step? And I had spent the last 3 years, working on this product and working with all these influencers, kind of was the go-to at the company for all things influencers, and had a couple internships in that in college as well. So, was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And that's kind of when Spark kind of came about, is in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you left home. You're from the Texas area, right?
Yep, from Dallas. Yep.
From Dallas. And then you went out to San Francisco, you said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So was that,
Yep.
or yes, go ahead.
So I was actually only in San Francisco for about 3 months before our whole company moved down to LA. So I was in LA for about 3 years.
So for a young girl graduating from college, what kind of advice would you give? I mean, that's a big jump, like you're in Dallas, then you move out to the West Coast with a startup. What's your attitude? I mean, I think a lot of people graduating from college might be a little bit nervous to leave, go someplace they've never been to or never lived, and go to a startup. I mean, I hear stories about people doing that, but how did that feel? Especially because your parents were expecting you to do this, and this. Now you're like, yep, and I'm going out west and going to a startup. I mean, that's a lot. That would be a lot for me to take in.
Yeah, honestly, it was terrifying. It was really scary. There were a lot of nights where I would just cry myself to sleep. I keep in mind I was like 21 years old at the time, and I know a lot of people go through a lot more traumatic things, but I think I came from a quite sheltered background.
Right.
Yeah, was born and raised in Dallas my whole life, in a suburb in Dallas, not even Dallas the city. So I was born and raised in Plano, Texas, like very kind of suburban America situation, and then went to college at Texas A&M, where it's very conservative.
Right.
It's kind of, everybody's kind of doing the same thing, and so to make that jump was honestly really terrifying. And I think but it's also, looking back, I love kind of doing the kind of chain effect of, if I hadn't done this, this wouldn't have happened. If I didn't do that, this wouldn't have happened. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of shifts in my life, but I look back and I'm so thankful for it. And it really was such an eye-opening experience. I got to meet so many different kinds of people. In Texas, relatively, if you kind of, it's more of like, there's similar types of people, especially if you grow up in the same area. But when you start to kind of branch out a little bit, you start to meet different people from different backgrounds, especially LA being such like a global city.
Right.
It was awesome, but definitely very scary at times.
I would have been scared to do that. And I would have been nervous for my daughters to do that. Being I'm on the East Coast, and to
Yeah.
have them do that, I think it would be terrifying also. But we think about, as we experience life, we think about all the dots behind us that connect to where we are right now. So if you hadn't taken that leap, if you hadn't changed your major, if you hadn't done all those things, and it really comes down to, being very fearless and being authentic. It really,
Yeah.
really is. And it takes a lot of guts to do that, to say, I'm going to step outside this comfort zone and do something. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that, but I could be completely wrong. It might be very different now, but you were scared. You were terrified.
Yeah, I definitely was.
That's good to know. So where did you go after you left LA?
So after LA, this brings us basically to last year. My boyfriend and I, we've been together for about 6.5 years now. And
Wow.
it was in the pandemic. We were stuck in this, we loved our apartment, don't get me wrong, but it was a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of West Hollywood, no balcony, no nothing. Like, it was very kind of, it was great for when we were kind of living our daily lives, because we didn't spend a lot
Right.
of time there. But when we were, quarantined, it was kind of like, oh man, this is really, a lot. And to be paying so much to live in such an expensive city, but not getting to enjoy it, just didn't make a lot of sense for us. And our whole plan was to eventually move back to Dallas anyway, because I love Dallas and I love the people here and the environment here, and it's growing so much. So we kind of figured, we've saved up a decent amount of money. Let's go back home, buy a house, and kind of start our lives here, because we both were remote. So luckily, that's something that we could take advantage of. So we decided to move back to Dallas around this time last year.
Wow. And that's when you decided you created Spark at that time. So tell us about Spark.
Yeah. Yeah. So Spark kind of came about just because I, have been working on the brand and agency side for the last several years. And I've worked with so many different creators and have met so many amazing, influencers. And, they've always been asking me, Summer, what do I charge for this? What does whitelisting mean? What does this mean? Should I work with this brand? How do I grow? And, that was kind of a lot of the conversations that I had with them, and kind of figured, hey, you know what? I have loved working for a startup. I have done this for the brand. I've done it for an agency. Why can't I do this for myself? And that day I signed up on Rocket Lawyer, set up an LLC, and it's, the rest is history.
Wow. Wow. So how many companies did you work for before you decided to go off on your own, the startup, and then you were interning at Fossil, right?
Yep, I interned at Fossil in college, and I had a couple other internships in college as well.
Mhm. And
So yeah.
so is that what really, having all of these different jobs, that's when you realize, what is whitelisted, by the way? I don't know what it means. Do you say whitelisted?
So essentially, yep. So that's when you essentially grant a brand the rights to boost your content, and basically put it out and put paid ads behind your content. So you have to have a business admin page on Facebook or whatever the platform is, and you basically grant them rights to boost your content.
So how did that feel to like, okay, I'm going to do this. I can work remotely. And what made you feel that you were going to be successful? Like, where did the confidence come from? What were you feeling at the time?
To be honest, I don't thinking back to it, I think it was just kind of like it was this idea that I had and kind of had noodled over it for a little bit as we were moving and kind of was like, I've worked in this space for a little while and it's a relatively new industry. Like and so much of it I feel like is personal connection. And that's something that I really love and is probably, and no matter what job I do, I really just enjoy connecting with different kinds of people and helping them whatever it may be, depending on whatever the skill set may be. But that was just something that I had really enjoyed in my previous job. And I just kind of figured like, anybody can start a company nowadays. You just kind of work at it and make it work. And it was something that I kind of really felt like I could help people with. And I really had something to offer and there was a market for. And it kind of was, I think I'm lucky in this sense that with this industry, you can kind of start it with literally nothing but your brain and a computer. That's really all you need. For people who start like a product-based business, I think it's a little bit harder. There's a lot more of a startup cost.
Right.
But for me, I didn't really have anything to lose, so it's just kind of like, I believe in this. I feel like there's a market. Let's go for it.
So what do you think? You said that you like working with people. Do you think that managing people is your biggest strength or strategizing? Why do you think you're good at this?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination. I feel like with talent management, it's really so much personality and people management. And that was something at my first job out of college where I was able to lead a team of 12. And that was something that I like lit my soul on fire, like, helping employees or team members to kind of, what are they interested in and help them to learn and just provide them with the assets and the resources for them to learn. That was so exciting to me. It's not even about me teaching them. It's just kind of opening the doors where I can and guiding them in a certain way. And I really enjoyed that. And I feel like right now with us, it's kind of the same thing where I'm able to really impact somebody's business and their livelihood just as, one person. And I feel like that's just the impact that you can make, I think is just really cool.
I think, from being, I guess I don't know if I'm an influencer or not. I don't know. I just do what I do. I hope that I'm inspiring and inspiring people to live a fearlessly authentic life and to be ageless and to not let age stop them from doing whatever they want and not defining it for them. But, I think working with people that that want the same thing. So you working with a talented person, you want to see them reach their goals. You know what they're good at. They know what they're good at. And so the two of you collaborate beautifully. But I'm sure there are times where you just meet somebody, maybe this hasn't happened yet, where you're just like, this isn't a good fit. And I'm gonna send you maybe to somebody else or just say, I'm sorry, I don't think it's a good fit. Has that happened?
Yeah, it happens all the time, really. The way that I always explain it is I feel like talent management and really any kind of client services based business is really like dating. And sometimes
Yes.
maybe both sides are great on their own. They're both great people. They're offering, great things, but it just isn't a fit. And the world is so big. So, for us, we really never take it as a personal thing. It's really just that, maybe the vibe is off. Maybe we just, work differently. Everybody has a different working style. And that happens all the time in any sort of 9 to 5 job or in a, entrepreneurship type situation. And so it does happen all the time. A lot of times it is kind of a tricky situation if somebody maybe doesn't fully understand that.
Right.
But really all you can do is just do your best, be empathetic, and however else somebody decides to respond really isn't your responsibility after that point.
So managing people has to be a great skill set for you. Managing, because you're managing talent, so you have to manage the person too. And sometimes I would think that sometimes the talent is wonderful, but dealing with the personality could be a little difficult.
Yeah,
That's got to
definitely.
be challenging, right?
And I think in our space, there's a lot of, diva personality type things. We're pretty low tolerance to that.
Love that.
We're pretty low tolerance to it. And we always, have a pretty strong vetting process before ever signing on any talent. And to kind of try and get that out of the way, obviously sometimes things just slip through and that you didn't see the signs, which totally happens. And we're still learning a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's especially in this influencer industry, their jobs are literally to broadcast their life on social media, and everybody's asking you, what do you do? What do you suggest? What do you recommend? What should I do about this? And so
Right.
it definitely tends to happen.
Wow. I find this incredibly interesting. And, we talked before, and I think you're so fearless for doing the things that you're doing still, because we haven't even gotten to TikTok yet. So we're going to take a quick break and we will be back in a few minutes with Summer Lee. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm Jody Harrison Bauer, and I'm so happy to have you join us back after the break. I am here with entrepreneur Summer Lee, and we were talking about taking risks, opening up your own business. She runs a talent agency, but it's a top tier influencer talent agency. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay. So top tier versus low tier, what's the difference?
Good question. I think a lot of people assume that it means high following or high reach, and that's definitely not the case. It essentially just means that we have really great talent that is really great at what they do. So maybe that's a really engaged audience. Maybe their content is top notch, really high production value. It could mean a lot of different things.
So high quality, you're getting high quality with your agency. So let's talk about what happened. So you start Spark. It's in the middle of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
And then TikTok happens. What happened there? When did that happen? Take me through that whole thing, because I was so excited. I knew you back then, and I was so excited for you. But give us all the information on that.
Yeah, so it was kind of a funny story, I guess. It was just one of those, like, if you believe in God, like a God moment. It was, so essentially I was working on Spark for probably, I think, around a year at that point. Things were going well. I was really enjoying it. I spent a little bit of my free time just working on consulting work for a couple different agencies. I was living the entrepreneur life where, I felt just really excited to be doing what I was doing, and really loved the clients that I was working with. But one of the girls that I used to manage, she used to do a couple deals with TikTok. So TikTok has like an in-house content agency, essentially like a creator partnerships agency. And basically my boss, who my future boss, I guess at this point, reached out to me and was like, hey, we've got a couple spots on the team. Would you be open to jumping over to work with us? And so at the time it was like, it was such an exciting opportunity. And I think part of the worry when kind of leaving to run your own business is, I don't know how long this is going to last me. I don't know where this is going to go. And, I had been approached with a couple opportunities that I really kind of entertained for a little bit, and ultimately ended up turning down to go back to a 9-to-5 job. But when TikTok approached and I, had the offer in my hand, it was kind of like, oh man, in my industry, it really does not get more cutting edge than TikTok. And it was, early 2021 where, it's really blowing up. Like, it's pretty established at this point. So it was kind of like, gosh, I think I got to do this, and it was just, it felt like an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And I ended up signing the offer, and I ended up joining the company, and I was there for about 8-9 months, and just left recently, earlier this year. And I know the tenure wasn't very long, but essentially kind of to walk through my thought process with it. I love the team. I have nothing bad to say about the company as a whole. I think it was just kind of a situation where I was, comparing what I was doing as a 9-to-5 corporate employee compared to what I was doing prior to that, running my own business, working with the people that I chose to work with, and it kind of being able to solve a lot of big problems as a small company. And it just felt so much more intentional and purposeful to me and fulfilling, to kind of run more of the startup situation and kind of run my own business and kind of grow and scale that. And so I left my job in February to pursue Spark full time.
Again, so fearless, because how do you turn down an opportunity with TikTok? Like, who does that? Nobody. But, props to you for taking it and saying, this has been great. I'm so glad I did it. But being an entrepreneur is really, being a business owner is really, really what I love to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to your parents for a minute. What were they saying when you had this opportunity? And then did you discuss with them? I know you're older now, but did you discuss with them, hey, I think I'm going to leave? What was the whole process with them when they heard first about TikTok and then you were leaving?
Yeah, that's thinking back to it, I guess. When I first got the job, I think they were very excited. And I feel like working at TikTok was almost, I feel like, a checkbox in their head of like, yeah, she'll be okay. And
Yeah.
so I think it was something that, what was almost like a verification, like, okay, legitimizing a
Well,
career, I
she
guess,
got the corporate job. She got the 401k.
Yes,
She's getting the benefits
exactly.
that she would have gotten
Yeah.
being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or working for a big corporation. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think having had an offer that, was a competitive salary and having all these benefits, like you said, I think they definitely felt a lot more comfortable and were like, okay, this field is something that's sustainable. It's something that is, not only am I interested, but is, can survive. I can survive off of this. And so I think at that point, they were very supportive about the job and were pretty excited. And but at the point when I was quitting, to be honest, it's kind of a funny thing because I am very close to my parents and kind of usually with any major life decision, even some minor life decisions, I'm, running it by them to confirm approval. And it's
Right.
something I need to work on, but,
No, it's okay. They don't have the answers. I will tell you, I heard from a very wise man, make sure that you ask the questions to people who actually have the experience in that, because we do tend to go to our parents. Mine are not here anymore, but going to your parents but they don't always have the best advice, but you'll learn that. But of course, at your age, you're doing that. And it's beautiful that you're that close to your parents.
Yeah, definitely something I'm still learning. And I think there's some things where I'm like, yeah, I think times have changed a little bit, but that's
Yeah.
such a good point. But I think at that point, so my boyfriend was the one who has been really kind of encouraging me to leave my job. He's a software engineer, so he has a very stable career. And he's like, we don't have children right now. We don't have any major responsibilities. Like, if this is something that you feel like, you really want to do, now is the time to do it. Eventually when, let's say we have children, it's not to say that you can't do it, but you've just got a lot more responsibilities and things to think about. And so he was really kind of encouraging me to just pursue what I wanted to do. And so I have him to thank for it. But basically at that point, I had already decided that this is what I was going to do. I was going to quit my job. I made a plan. And funnily enough, I think subconsciously I didn't want my parents to disapprove. And so I just went ahead and quit my job. And afterwards, I, had a little bit extra free time and was visiting my parents one time. And they were like, you quit your job, didn't you? And I was like, yep, I did. So I didn't even tell them until after I did it.
Wow. And again,
Yeah.
what was their reaction? I mean, they've been so proud of you all along. It sounds like they've always had a lot of faith in you, and love your boyfriend for being so supportive, because people have supportive significant others just do so well in life and in work, because you've got to have that. You've got to have that connection, that support. So when you told them that you had left TikTok after they thought, okay, this is like the pinnacle of what she wanted to do, and now she's left. What did they say? Were they probably had a lot of faith in you at this point that you're making all the right decisions?
Yeah, I think at this point they were pretty supportive about it. And I think there, have been a couple things where I feel like made them feel a lot more secure about it. And that, like, my dad has been preaching to me about investments my whole life and savings. And I think even when I was working on Spark before TikTok, that was something that my dad helps me to manage some of my investments. And so that was one thing where I felt like he was seeing that I was still sticking to that, was making enough of an income to kind of sustain my lifestyle and, make sure that I was living to, the quality of life that I wanted to live. And I feel like after those things were checked off, my parents are like, okay, do what you want to do as long as you're happy, as long as you're taken care of.
I love that. I really do. So tell me, what kind of tips would you give, your top tips, 2, 3, 4, however you have, to young, we're going to stick to women here, young women who want to start their own business. Maybe they've been out in the work field and they've worked for a big company, or if they worked for somebody else, and they're like, you know what? I've really honed these skills and I want to go off on my own. What would you tell them to do?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, I know this sounds so cliche, but I think it's just do it. Like, really, I know everybody kind of has a different financial situation, and I was very lucky in that I was able to do it without a ton of worries. But assuming all of that is okay, and you're able to sustain yourself, and you can, and even if it's not, maybe it's like setting a goal for you to save up a certain amount so that you can pursue what you want to do. I think is to just start. I think a lot of people kind of get bogged down in some of the details of like, oh, I got to set this up. I want to set up my social media. I got to set up all these things. I got to, think about some of the more big picture stuff. But I think a huge thing that I've seen with my own business and with a lot of other fellow entrepreneurs or colleagues, or, other people who have started side hustles or full-time businesses, I think is to not get bogged down in those kinds of details and just start, like, throw it out there, see what works, see what doesn't, see what sticks. And then at that point, you'll kind of reiterate and evolve, but just kind of start.
How did you know that there was a need for Spark in the space?
Yeah. So I think on one hand, being that I had worked with a lot of influencers in the past, I kind of had an inkling, and I had a little bit more of like data from other people and feedback of, influencers and friends requesting these kinds of services. And, I had talked to a couple other influencers and just kind of put a couple feelers out there, but also looking at other competitors, or people in the space who are already doing something similar, and seeing like, okay, they've been doing this for X amount of time. What are things that I can learn from, and what are things that maybe I can kind of recreate in my own style and in my own way.
So having a talent agency, do you go out and find talent, or do people come to you? So somebody's listening right now and they're talented. And or do you pursue them? How does it work, or does it work both ways?
Both ways. So we have a lot. I think at this point now, we do a lot off of a referral kind of basis, word of mouth basis. We've gotten enough amazing clients where I think a lot of it is just kind of a chain network effect.
Right.
But in the beginning, when it was just myself, I was the only agent at the company. It was me sitting here emailing people all day long,
Right.
and just sending out like, hey, here's what I can offer you. Here's my background. This is why I think we can work together, and doing a lot of that kind of cold pitching. But luckily now that's kind of died down a little bit, just because we've kind of built up the roster now.
Well, we're all selling something, right? The first thing we have to
Mm.
know is how to sell ourselves. I know in owning a business, a fitness studio, the first thing I'm selling is I know that I have what it takes to train somebody, to help them lose weight, gain muscle, whatever their fitness goals are, but I have to sell myself first. I have to have
Yeah.
integrity. I have to have the experience. It's funny because, and I don't know if this has happened to you yet, but people come to me, and I've been doing this for 33 years, and I'll say to somebody, "Do you know anything about me?" And they're like, "No, but I know so and so works out with you, so I know you're good." And so, you almost feel like, hey, well, do you want to know that I have the credibility, integrity, that I have the experience, that I'm just not some person who put my name out on there? Do you have that, that people are just, as you said, word of mouth, or that you are, as you're pitching people and making cold calls, that you're selling yourself?
Yeah, definitely a mix of both. And that's, I think, huge for so many of the people that I work with on a daily basis that I've brought over to Spark, or on other business ventures. So much of it is through referral. And I always say it's a small world, so don't piss anybody off.
Love
Yeah.
that.
And if you, I mean, our lovely bookkeeper, our CPA, the girls that work with me at Spark, and like so many people within our kind of sphere have all been through word of mouth. So I'm a big believer in referrals.
Yeah, I like that too. What would you say is the biggest thing, the most important thing you learned when you were at TikTok?
The most important thing I learned when I was at TikTok. Um, I
Or
think
the
I really got a good knowledge of a good perspective on the industry as a whole. And I think, I had worked at a couple different agencies, and the agency model compared to more of like a startup tech model is so different. And I
Right.
had worked at a really small tech startup where I was like essentially the first or second employee, versus a TikTok where it is still a startup, it's still in startup stage, but it's a lot bigger. I think that was a really interesting transition to kind of get to see. And also, I think I did get a lot of kind of actual tactile industry knowledge that maybe I wouldn't have gotten elsewhere.
That's what I was thinking too, was that this is stuff you can't pick up maybe on the street. Like this is TikTok, for God's sake. Like
Yeah,
I mean, the people that you're working with, the average age was probably what, 28?
probably. Yeah, like early 30s.
Wow. Wow. So were
Yeah.
they surprised when you left? Is there, did you think you were going to be there when you took the job? Did you think this is it? Like maybe your parents thought, this is it. I'm going to be here for a while. This is going to be good for me. Were you 100% 2 feet in, or did you think, I'm going to go in here for a little while and then I think I'm probably going to leave?
I definitely thought I was going to leave at some point, but I think I thought that I was going to stay for a little longer than I did. My plan was to stay like a year and a half to 2 years to really, in my mind, a huge part of it was like, I need to have this checkbox on my resume. I need to have this on my
Right.
resume. And for it to actually matter, it needs to be a year and a half to 2 years. Otherwise, people aren't going to care. But I think a huge realization came from talking to different friends, mentors. My boyfriend is, if I leave to pursue entrepreneurship, if I leave to do this, and even if it's not Spark, if it's something else, the dream is that I don't need a resume anymore. And so I
Right.
think that was a huge realization, was like, what exactly am I chasing here? And does that make sense to chase that? Or is it kind of just for external validation and not something that I really need or care about?
So, okay, that I mean, like to have that on your resume, that's like amazing. It's absolutely amazing. For young women who are starting their own business, young entrepreneurs are in a business, they're feeling overwhelmed. Tell me what your daily life looks like and how you keep yourself organized and why that's so important, and taking time for yourself.
Yeah, I think I guess there's a couple things. I've always been pretty organized. I put everything in
I
my
got
Google
that feeling
Calendar.
from you. I knew that. I knew that just from talking to you, and then here now. I know you are.
Yeah, I like to keep things very organized. My Google Calendar is very siloed. I've got everything, life stuff, and then I've got business stuff, like very clear cut. And even my boyfriend and I, like we have kind of what we call a home calendar. So we've got all of that scheduled out, like our weekly date nights, anytime we have to take care of our dog, or for workouts, we have all of that scheduled. Which I think, when you have a lot going on, it's just the easiest way to kind of keep organized in that way. I love looking at different kinds of software to help me keep organized. So I'm a big fan of Google Sheets, Google Docs,
So
all of our travel that we
is
do.
probably listening to this right now, who will be listening to it. He's saying, yes, Jody, we need to do those things, because I'm not like that at all. I have 100,000 thoughts going through my head, and I just think they're going to materialize on my Google Calendar, and they don't.
That's so funny. Well, that's why you have a team, right, to help you out. And I feel like that's how a creative mind works. I think I have much more of an analytic, like organized mind rather than a creative mind, and everybody's got a different strength. But yeah, and with email, I'm very prompt about emails usually, and
Yes, you are.
have all my labels and everything. Yeah. But I think as far as kind of making time for myself, usually pretty much around 6 p.m. I pretty much shut off my computer. I'm lucky enough where now living in Texas, we were able to get a house where I can have a separate office. And I think that's a huge game changer. When I was working corporate or at startups, when you're working 9 to 5, it's really easy to just be on your computer all the time because you've got a boss watching to
Right.
make sure you're doing everything you need to be. But luckily now I think I am able to, from the beginning, I'm very much of the mindset for myself and all employees, like, take care of yourself first. We shouldn't be living to work. It should be like, your work revolves around how you want to live. So
How
I've
your
always
life,
kind of been
right.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you want to have that non-toxic environment. Because I know
Yeah.
people who have had very toxic workplaces, and you never stop. You're always in front of your computer, and there's never any downtime. And when you do take that downtime, you feel guilty, or somebody's screaming at you for something. I mean, I just can't even believe those types of workplaces still exist. But that's when you say goodbye, shut the door. You're not, you need to know what your boundaries are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. When you wake up in the morning, what's a regular day for you? Do you go right to your emails, or how does such an organized person like you stay on top of everything? What's a regular day?
Yeah. Usually when I wake up in the morning, I'll usually check my phone and just kind of look through things. I'm not answering anything, just kind of checking, what's my agenda for the day, what meetings do I have that day, any appointments that I've got to go to, and just kind of map out my day in my mind. From that point, I usually kind of get up and get ready, and I'm not on my phone at all, not taking calls while I get ready. I used to do that, and I feel like it just puts you in a bad mindset.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy my morning routine. I'll get up and I'll make my matcha or my coffee, whatever, breakfast. And then after that point, usually either we'll take a walk or try to do something physical. Some days it gets away from me, I'll be honest, but try to
Yeah.
do something,
Even me too.
active. And then at that point, basically, once the workday starts, and I'll come into my office, and that's when I open up my laptop and kind of go through all my emails, clean everything that's junk or anything that doesn't need to be done. I'm an inbox zero kind of gal, so no unread
Oh, I have
emails in my
about
inbox.
30, I have about 35,000 unopened
Oh my gosh,
emails. I
that
know
would drive me
it gives my
crazy.
oldest daughter anxiety. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Don't let me see that.
no, it'll drive me crazy.
And I usually like to schedule meetings from after 12 o'clock. So I leave the morning. I don't know where I heard this from, but you're supposed to leave your most important creative work in the morning because that's when your brain is working the best. So I try to schedule my meetings for a little bit later in the day. And then from 12 to about 4, I usually take meetings. And then after that, around 6 o'clock, I log off and go do my thing outside of work.
So what do you think the key is to setting yourself up for success? You're very organized. You know what your day is going to be like. I love everything you just shared with me. Um, my mornings, not that you asked, but my mornings, I have found that I wake up in the morning, and I have a million things on my mind. So I just go to it. But I have to be at the studio. So it's really fast. So my mornings are not as relaxing as yours, because I've got to get a lot of things out while I'm thinking. And because everybody wants to train in the morning, nobody wants to train in the middle of the afternoon. And by the middle, 12, 1 o'clock, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I need to get my workout in. So, you know, for me, I just need to go to bed earlier. But the key to success for somebody starting their own business, what would you say the key to success for somebody who's going to start?
Ooh, to pick one, I feel like is so hard. I think it's just that you've just got to keep working at it. There are some days, especially when you're managing your own business, and I'm sure you probably feel this way sometimes too, is you sometimes you don't want to work. And if you don't have a boss telling you exactly what you need to do, you don't have that structure. Like sometimes it's just not as fun. And I feel like a lot of people have this idea of entrepreneurship being really fun. Every day you're just solving all these cool problems and you're working with cool people. But I think like 90% of it is just heads down, getting stuff done. It's just a lot. Yeah, a lot of like computer
Blinders
time.
on, nose to the grindstone.
Exactly. But I think if you really kind of stick it through during those times, that's how a business is really born. Like, that's how you're able to kind of build something, is by putting the work in. And also, of course, just being strategic about what you're doing, like not blindly doing it, but, making a plan, having a purpose, and then going after that with, your plan or purpose in mind.
I think that's great advice. Okay. All right. So we have 2 minutes left until the end of the show. I need to ask you, how do you live a fearlessly authentic life?
Yeah, I think for me, it just means living intentionally and purposefully. And also, I know it's so cliche, but I was thinking about this before the show. I think, the quote of when life gives you lemons, that whole concept is kind of like when an opportunity is presented, you kind of evaluate it based on where you're at, what your situation is, and pursue it. And just take any opportunity that kind of comes your way. I feel like we were talking about when you look back on your life and all of these dots are kind of connected. I feel like you can't really do that unless you really take those dots and you start to draw those dots. I feel like it's really just kind of pursuing whatever it is that you want to do, just intentionally and purposefully.
Yeah, step into that space. And I feel like that's what you've done. I feel that you really represent a fearlessly authentic person. I think you really stepped into your authenticity and you took risks. And look, we're never always fearless because we're always facing fear, right? And I just think you've done a beautiful job of it. And congratulations on your success. Really, really happy for you. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in working for you? We have 30 seconds.
Yeah, our socials on everything is at Spark Talent Group, and then my email, summer@sparktalentgroup.com. So feel free to reach out to me there. I'm also on Instagram. It's just summer_LEEE. I couldn't get just my name, so I wasn't lucky enough, but yeah, just search Summer Lee and I'll pop up.
Wonderful. Summer Lee, thank you so, so much for being on the show. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody.
And I will talk to all of you next week. And in the meantime, have a fearlessly authentic rest of your week. I'll see you next week. Bye.